Story 1. The wrong bus has happened back when I was in the 4th grade. We were in science class, and one day our teacher announced we would be taking a field trip to a science museum. Now, to be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of science at the time, but I always enjoyed going to museums. There was something about walking around, seeing all the exhibits, and being outside of school that felt fun. The museum was about a half-hour drive from the school, so we all packed onto the bus and headed down. When we got there, everything went as usual. We split into little groups with friends, walked through the exhibits, and got to explore. Eventually, it was time for lunch, and our teacher reminded us that we'd be leaving soon. She told everyone to meet back at the entrance in 10 minutes. I had already seen everything I wanted to see, so I decided I'd just go back to the bus early and play games on my phone until it was time to leave. That was my first mistake. I walked outside into the back parking lot where our bus had dropped us off. I saw a couple of buses lined up, and one of the drivers waved me over. Without thinking much, I climbed on board. But right as I stepped onto the bus, the driver stopped me and told me there would be no phones allowed on the ride back. I was frustrated. Why would that even matter? Still, I handed him my phone, not wanting to get in trouble, and sat down. That's when things got strange. The driver started the engine, and the bus began to move. At first, I thought maybe we were just repositioning. But then, I realized he was driving out of the parking lot without any of the other kids. I panicked. I shouted that the rest of my class was still inside, but he ignored me completely. I begged him to stop, but instead, he turned around and yelled at me to shut up. By now, my stomach sank. I had the worst feeling that something was very, very wrong. He pulled the bus onto the freeway, speeding up as if he was taking me somewhere far away. That's when it hit me. The real reason he took my phone was so I couldn't call for help. I felt completely trapped, helpless, just staring out the window, wondering what was about to happen to me after what felt like forever, but was probably about 5 minutes. I suddenly heard sirens. I turned around and saw flashing police lights in the distance. The bus pulled over, and I watched as multiple officers surrounded us. The moment the bus came to a stop, the driver flung the door open and bolted into a nearby field. Several officers chased after him, while another ran onto the bus to make sure I was okay. I was shaken, but safe. They returned me to my class, and the man was caught shortly afterward. To this day, I'm haunted by what could have happened if the police hadn't shown up when they did. Story 2. Trapped in the zoo. This story happened when I was around 8 years old. Our tiny school organized a full-day field trip to the zoo. Since the school was small, practically the entire student body went. It was about an hour-long drive, but we were excited. A whole day at the zoo meant no classes, no homework, and just pure fun. The first part of the day went smoothly. We toured animal exhibits, got food, and later looked at different plants and nature areas. But honestly, I was more into the animals, so my friend Matt and I wandered back toward the sea lion exhibit. When we got there, a zoo worker noticed us and asked if we wanted to help feed the animals. Of course, we said yes. I mean, as kids, that sounded like the coolest thing in the world. He told us to follow him and led us through a door near the exhibit. Suddenly, we were in a dark, quiet hallway behind the scenes. It felt strange, but exciting. He said the food was stored farther inside, so we followed him into a dim storage room cluttered with junk. Then, he told us to wait there for a moment. He walked out, shut the door, and we heard the lock click. Instantly, our excitement turned to dread. We tried the handle, but it was solid. The door wouldn't budge. We banged on it and yelled for help, but the thick walls muffled everything. Nobody came. The room was about 15 by 10 feet, dusty and pitch black. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. We stayed in there for hours. We shouted until our voices hurt. We hit the door until our arms ached, but no one heard us. Eventually, exhausted, we actually fell asleep on the cold floor when we woke up. The sun had shifted, and the room was still silent. We thought we might be trapped there forever. At last, we heard faint footsteps outside. We screamed as loudly as we could, and after a terrifying pause, the door finally creaked open. Another zoo worker stood there, shocked to see us. We told her what had happened, and she seemed horrified. Apparently, the entire zoo had been looking for us for hours. By the time we got back outside, the sun was already setting. The man who locked us in had vanished. Later, we learned he had been caught apparently. He was struggling with serious drug problems and had been acting strange for weeks to this day. I don't know why he trapped us. Maybe he planned something worse. But we were unbelievably lucky that someone finally found us before the zoo closed completely. Story 3. The Vanishing Boy. This story happened when I was around 9 or 10 years old. Our class took a trip to a state park. These trips were pretty normal. We did them several times a year. Just hiking trails, looking at wildlife, and exploring nature. There were about 20 of us, and our teacher led us down a long path that curved through the hills. My best friend Daryl and I were walking together, chatting as usual, when something caught our eye. Just off the trail was a strange-looking mushroom. Curious, we stepped aside to take a closer look. The rest of the group kept going, moving up the hill until they disappeared from sight. That's when we heard a noise behind a tree nearby, expecting an animal. We cautiously looked over only to see a boy around our age. He was wearing a red shirt and jeans, and he was half hiding behind the tree, watching us. We didn't recognize him. He wasn't in our class. We figured maybe he was with another school group. So Daryl asked if he was on a field trip to Dot. The boy stepped out, stared directly at Daryl, and said his name. We froze. Then he turned to me and said, "Mine." Chills ran down my spine. Neither of us had ever seen him before, so how did he know who we were? Trying not to panic, we told him he should come with us so we could take him back to the group. Instead, he slipped back behind the tree. We walked closer, but when we looked, he was gone. Completely vanished. There was nowhere he could have run in those few seconds. No trail, no open space, just dense trees. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. Shaken, we ran back to our class and told the teacher everything. He reported it to the park staff, but no one ever found the boy. To this day, Daryl and I still talk about it. We both remember the same thing. A strange boy in red who knew our names, and then was just gone.